Good morning, friends. Today we are beginning third series of our interaction in sociological thinkers course. The first series was started in the first week of January, if I remember correctly, on 3rd January, and in my academic diary, I had titled that series as the concept of man and society in the writings of classical thinkers of sociology, primarily in the writings of Emile Durkheim, Karl Marx, and Max Weber. After the introductory lectures, I had primarily dealt with two of the major works of Emile Durkheim, namely the division of labor in society, and secondly, lay suicide. Then we started our second series of interaction on the broader theme of economy and politics, or political economy of Karl Marx and political economy of Max Weber. In the first series, the major thinkers were Emile Durkheim and Karl Marx, and Max Weber was primarily some sort of marginal figure who tried to re-articulate the pre-sociological notions of utilitarian theory developed by Thomas Hobbes and social Darwinists like Herbert Spencer and the Scottish political economists like David Hume and Adam Smith. In the second series, we primarily dealt with the political economy reformulated from the basic foundational source of Scottish political economy by Karl Marx, and Weberian reformulation of political economy primarily from the complementary side of Karl Marx, as we have seen that Max Weber built his sociological analysis, primarily on the shoulders of three giants. Uh, Philosophically, he was influenced by Neo-Kantianism of German tradition, whereas Karl Marx was influenced by uh, the idealist philosophy of Hegel in the beginning. Then he tried to reformulate Hegelian philosophy by synthesizing the socialist tradition of Germany in particular and modern Europe in general. But unlike the earlier utopian philosophers of socialism, Karl Marx claimed his philosophy to be a scientific socialist utopia or the communist agenda to reconstitute the foundation of European modern societies. In this second series, Karl Marx and Max Weber were the major theorists, and explicitly Emile Durkheim did not contribute much on the concept of power, authority, domination, but in his division of labor in society as well as in suicide, these concepts were implicit, and we did refer to Durkheimian writings in comparison with the Marxist and the Weberian notions of power and domination. The concept of power in Karl Marx was primarily rooted in the economic relationship of base and superstructure, forces of productions and relations of productions, primarily their dialectical relationship in the historical formation of Western Europe. The way Marx and Weber discussed the political economy of industrial capitalist society of 18th and 19th century Europe until professional ethics and civic morals, Durkheim was not very explicit about these issues, and he treated these issues of substantive theory, whereas he was trying to develop the formal theory of societies, the mechanical society or traditional or pre-industrial society, and the organic solidarity or modern industrial capitalist society. Now, in the third series, the broader rubric of our interaction, my lectures in particular, and your queries and doubts and anxieties, academic anxieties about these issues, primarily in the digital format of tutorial interaction, which we are having on WhatsApp group. We will be dealing with religion and society in classical sociology. I am not very particular about the term sociology of religion, because we will not be dealing only with sociology of religion represented by Marx, Weber, and Emile Durkheim, but we will be also dealing with the pre-sociological, pre-Durkheimian, pre-Weberian, pre-Marxist concept of religion as well, that is more generally referred to as anthropology of religion. Since we have a separate course on anthropological theory, as well as we have a separate course on religion and society in India, we will restrict ourselves primarily to the broader canvas we have been dealing with within this course on sociological thinkers. As I do in most of my friendly lectures, I will first share with you my resources, academic resources on which I build my academic diary to interact with you in the classroom situation. Since these are the days of digital online teaching, there is no scope for the normal lectures of offline teaching, but I try to cover up your constant of not consulting JNU library offline. I understand your situation in the ongoing pandemic online teaching. It has its own merits and demerits. Let me share with you my academic resources or references first. The first book or the central text of my today's lecture and the lectures which will follow in the third series on religion and society is Emile Durkheim's book. I am using second translation. This is called Benedict Classics, and in the English language it has slightly different title than the first edition, first translation, but this translation has another title. This is titled as the elementary forms of religious experience. The translator claims, uh, this is translated by Joseph Ward Swan, and he has uh, translated it in 2015. It is a new translation from the original French. Therefore, those who rely on the first translation, they will find the title and some of the translated terms as not so familiar, but I just want to stress that there are two very popular versions of the elementary forms of religious life of Durkheim. And then the second source of my lectures on the third series, Religion and Society, is The Sociology of Religion by Max Weber. This book was published in German in 1922, 2 years after the death of Max Weber. As you know, I have been stressing again and again, Max Weber died in 1920, Emil Durkheim died in 1917, and Karl Marx died in 1883. Now I am using the fourth edition of this English translation, and it was published with a very long introduction by Talcott Parsons, and it had Parsonian imprint, which I have been stressing again and again, that in English language, until very recently, we have not been reading, Max Weber original writings in faithful, authentic translation. Rather, we have been relying on Talcott Parsons and his school's interpretation of Max Weber. Now, my third resource is a new book edited by Thomas C. Ertmann, Thomas, Thomas C. Ertmann, Ertman, edited as Max Weber's Economic Ethic of the World Religions. This was published for the first time in 2017. It is a new book. My fourth resource in this series of lectures is introduction, or rather an introductory textbook on sociology of religion, introducing anthropology of religion, edited by Jack David Ehler. I am using the second edition. This is also a relatively new book. The first edition was published in 2007, and the second edition was published in 2015. I hope you will enjoy this series of lectures also, although in our tutorial interaction in the WhatsApp group, I understand that some of you are still not taking sociological technical terms very seriously. And although I am, stressing again and again that, the word religion, the word God, is sociologically conceptualized and communicated in altogether different language. But some of you are still a victim of your childhood, your familiarity of English language in your biographical context. I have nothing to say about personal experience of anybody, including my own. I can only request you, all of you with folded hands, please listen to me. Do not use, do not remember, do not consider your personal experience of God and religion and try to understand the way religion is being used by Emile Durkheim, Karl Marx, and Max Weber as a sociological concept, which has almost nothing to do with your personal understanding and your personal experience of religion or God. In case you are not ready to rethink, reformulate, reform your understanding, I cannot help it. You will suffer in life, because then sociology is not made for you. We are entering in the, rather, we have already entered in the third month of the 4 months semester, and practically, the 3.5 months of semester, because of corona situation. And I'm sorry to say it again and again that you are very bright students. You are one of the most responsible batches. But you are not bracketing your existence. You are not ready to forget the wrong understanding of yours in the field of religion or religious experience, particularly the concept of God and the concept of religion. Please read Emile Durkheim again and again. Whether you take the first translation, Elementary Forms of Religious Life, or the second translation, Elementary Forms of Religious Experience, or Max Weber, or Karl Marx, or any good introductory book of readings in sociology of religion or anthropology of religion, then you will understand that you are overgeneralizing your personal life experience, and it will do a lot of harm to you as a person as well as a student of sociology. Now, let me stress it again that before Emile Durkheim wrote the Elementary Forms of Religious Life or Religious Experience in the French language in 1912, which was for the first time translated into English language in 1915. This was the first book of Emile Durkheim which was made available to the English readers, and other writings of Durkheim were translated gradually. The last book, Professional Ethics and Civic Morals, was translated just after the lay suicide, and we have discussed these issues. Now, before Durkheim's book, in sociology and social anthropology, people used to read a book written by E. B. Tyler, Tyler. E. B. Tyler had written a book titled Primitive Culture in 1871. And then the second major book was written by Sir James Fraser in 1890. The name of the book was called The Golden Bough. As a result, chronologically speaking, sociology of religion or anthropology of religion, in our center, we consider both disciplines, sociology and social anthropology or cultural anthropology, as first cousins. Therefore, we do not differentiate between cultural anthropology, social anthropology, or sociology so far as religion and society is concerned. Now, with this introduction, I will share with you my own reading, my own textual analysis of Durkheim's book, Elementary Forms of Religious Life, and as I do in other lectures, I will be primarily reading out my newly written academic diary on the basis of Durkheim's book. I am showing it again. I am using the second translation, and I begin my academic diary with the following sentences. In previous works, the division of labor in society as well as lay suicide, Durkheim had already demonstrated the efficacy of comparative method and positivist structural functional theory of society. Whereas in the elementary forms of religious life, 1912 in French, Durkheim championed the method of contrast and symbolic theory of society. I will read it again for your convenience. In the previous works, before he wrote the elementary forms of religious life, particularly the division of labor in society and lay suicide, Emile Durkheim had demonstrated the efficacy or utility of comparative method and positivist structural functional theory of society. But in this book, in his last published book in his own lifetime, Emile Durkheim is taking new departures in terms of method and theory. And what is that new departure? Instead of comparative method of the earlier works, namely division of labor in society and lay suicide, in this book, Emile Durkheim is not taking the help of comparative method. Rather, he is developing a new method of studying religion and society in human historical experience. And what is that method? That is the method of contrast, comparison versus contrast. And he is taking a departure, new departure in theory as well. Instead of the previous positivist, structural, functional theory of society, he is developing a new theory of society which can be called or which has been interpreted as symbolic theory of society. Now, this book, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, is considered as the mother of four theoretical developments in sociology and social anthropology. And what are these? The functional theory of culture developed by Bronislaw Malinowski, the structural functionalism of A.R. Radcliffe Brown in British social anthropology. Bronislaw Malinowski was also a British social anthropologist, and he and Radcliffe Brown were contemporary. They were also competitors. Then these previous works were refined in the elementary forms of religious life in such a way that it attracted the attention of Talcott Parsons and his followers of America. Therefore, this book, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, gave development, or rather, it gave birth to not only functional theory of culture of British social anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski, but two different types of structural functionalism, one in England, or rather United Kingdom, by A.R. Radcliffe Brown and his followers, another in United States of America by Talcott Parsons and his disciples and collaborators. Now, there are finer distinctions between the structural functionalism of A.R. Radcliffe Brown on the one hand and Talcott Parsons on the other. Therefore, this book is the mother, this book is the foundation of functionalism. This book is also the mother of structural functionalisms of two variety. Then fourth, this is also the development, this is also the womb from which French structuralism of Claude Lévi-Strauss was developed, and it also gave rise to post-structuralism of the early disciples and later detractors of Lévi-Strauss, Claude Lévi-Strauss. Therefore, this book is a seminal book in sociology. This book is the mature writing of Emile Durkheim, and although there is larger continuity in the works of early Durkheim and later Durkheim, but if you are interested, you can call that there are two Durkheims, and it will not be a logical contradiction, although sociologically it will not make much sense. There was an early Durkheim who wrote The Division of Labor in Society and Le Suicide, and then there is a later Durkheim who wrote Primitive Classification with his nephew Marcel Mauss, and who wrote his magnum opus, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, which influenced almost every major sociologist who was working after the death of Emile Durkheim in 1917. Now let me read out the major quotations of this book, so that in case you do not get the new translation of this book, you can rely on my academic diary, which I prepared for you, and I am reading out points one by one. Now, in the introduction on page 1 and in para 1, Durkheim wrote, and I am quoting in direct narration, a religious form may be most elementary when it fulfills two criteria. A, when it is found in a society whose organization is surpassed by no others in simplicity. I am reading it again so that you can make a note. A religious form may be most elementary when it fulfills two criteria. A, when it is found in a society whose organization is surpassed by no others in simplicity. And B, when it is possible to explain it, that is a religious experience or religious life, without making use of any element borrowed from a previous religion. This is a technical quotation, and I will request you to use it the way Durkheim is using. Then point 2, page number 1, paragraph second. Sociology raises other problems than history or ethnography. If we have taken it as the subject of our research, it is because it has seemed to us better adapted than any other to lead to an understanding of the religious nature of man, to show us an essential and permanent aspect of humanity. I will stress again that for Durkheim, religion is equal to social, and God is a symbolic representation or emblem of society. It has nothing to do with the God of your personal profane experience. Point 3, page 2, para 2. It is an essential postulate of sociology that a human institution cannot rest upon an error and a lie, without which it cannot exist. If it were not founded in the nature of things, it would have encountered in the facts, that is social facts, a resistance over which it could never have triumphed. Quotation ends. Now I am making it much simpler for you, or much more sociological of contemporary generation. What Emile Durkheim is trying to communicate in this paragraph, I have paraphrased in my own language of sociology. Durkheim is trying to say, and my quotation begins. This is my quotation which I wrote in my academic diary. Therefore, this is not from Durkheim. This is my understanding of Durkheimian sentence which I have just read out. And I am reading my own quotation. In the language of Karl Popper, without a natural foundation, external to concepts or theories, it, that is the human institution, could have been falsified, and thus would not have been, and thus it would have been discredited. I am repeating my own understanding of the previous paragraph which I just read out. Durkheim is trying to say that in the language of Karl Popper, without a natural foundation, the elementary forms or elementary structures of religion, religious life or religious experience could not have been in use for such a long period of time. Why? In the language of Karl Popper, without a natural foundation external to concepts and theories of religion in human society, the concept of religion and God could not have existed. Because as Karl Popper says, without a natural foundation, religion could have been falsified as a concept in the empirical context, and thus it would have been discredited in sociological literature as a concept. But what we find, that it is not only Emile Durkheim, but also Karl Marx, but also Max Weber, but also E.B. Tylor, but also James Frazer, but also Sigmund Freud, but also Levi-Strauss, Clifford Geertz. They are all using this for the last 200 years because it had a great communication value in sociological discourse the world over. Now, point 4. From page 3, para 1. But one must know how to go underneath the symbol to the reality which it represents and which gives it its meaning. The reasons with which the faithful justify them may be erroneous, but the true reasons do not cease to exist, and it is the duty of science of society, that is sociology, to discover them. I am reading it again. But one must know how to go underneath the symbol, that is religion or God, to the reality which it represents and which gives it its meaning. The reasons with which the faithful justify them may be erroneous in the eyes of the researcher or the sociologist, but the true reasons do not cease to exist, and it is the duty of science of society, that is sociology, to discover these true reasons why religion exists in society, even if the justification of the faithful or the believer may be erroneous in the eyes of the researcher or the sociologist. Now, I am, writing in my academic diary the interpretation of the above paragraph. This paradigmatic theory is regarded as the foundation of structural anthropology of Claude Lévi-Strauss in particular and symbolic sociology in Europe and the New World in general. Then point 5, page 3, para 2. In reality, there are no religions which are false. And then he is giving 3 examples. A, all religions are true in their own fashion. B, all answer, though in different ways, all answers to the given conditions of human existence are also true, although in different ways. C, it is undeniably possible to arrange them in a hierarchy, but they cannot be placed in different classes. Now, I do feel that for MA first semester students, this is a difficult quotation. This is a difficult paragraph which requires a little elaboration, and I have done this for your convenience. And this is my interpretation, my understanding, which I wrote in academic diary for this class. This theoretical schema is the foundation of Louis Dumont works, particularly Homo hierarchicus and Homo equilis. Homo hierarchicus, H-O-M-O, hierarchicus, H-I-E-R-A-R-C-H-I-C-U-S, Homo hierarchicus, and Homo equilis, H-O-M-O, Homo A-U-A-E-Q, A-E-Q-U-A-L-I-S. Now, it requires a little elaboration. Hierarchy is, I am talking about Homo hierarchicus. Hierarchy is a religious concept where there are different elements who share the same value system and which plays the same role as other elements play the role. But they are placed in different stages as in the Catholic Church of Europe. On the other is an economic concept where the ruling class and the working class are two separate entities who have not only different economic standing, but their value system is also different. Thus, different religions of the world can be horizontally arranged in a hierarchy, whereas different classes are vertically arranged in social inequality. In the language of Claude Lévi-Strauss, different religions are not uniform, but they are homologous. Now, what is uniform? For example, so far as human anatomy is concerned, all men and all women, they are homologous to each other, although men and women are not uniform so far as human anatomy and physiology is concerned. But from sociological point of view, they are elements like each other. Man and woman both are elements like each other in social structure, in social system, in social formation. And they perform similar functions in society irrespective of their gender. This means homologous. Now, point 6. Page 3, paragraph 3. All religions respond to same needs. They play the same role. They depend upon the same causes. They can also well serve to show the nature of religious life. And consequently, all religions resolve the same problem which we wish to study, namely to discover the elementary forms or structures of religious life or experience. If we have to decide, or if we have decided to study the ritual structures of Arunta tribe of Australia, among many religious systems or ritual structures existing in the world, it is merely for reasons of method, quotation ends. This method of contrast is the foundation. This is my interpretation of the above sentence, above paragraph. What Durkheim is trying to underline in point 6. He is trying to underline the method of contrast. This method of contrast is the foundation of path-breaking work of E. Evans Pritchard, particularly his book The Knower, and David Snyder's work, The American Kinship. Thank you for today. We will discuss tomorrow. We will continue it tomorrow when we deal with the concept of religion in pre and post Durkheimian sociology of religion. Thank you.